Hi, I'm Jeremy Crosby.
And I'm Nick Boucher. We're the hosts for the program that's all about your city, Talking Fitchburg.
Every day, we pull together the news, events, and information you need to stay on top of what's happening in the city of Fitchburg.
Find Talking Fitchburg on cable TV, Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, and our live stream on the web. Plus, you can view all our headlines and stories on Facebook, YouTube, and our video on demand service. This is your city.
Keep up with Talking Fitchburg and the issues that affect you and your neighbors.
Want to know what's happening in your city? Get Notify Me messages from the City of Fitchburg. Visit fitchburgwi.gov on your computer or mobile device and select the big Notify Me button on the left. Enter your email and/or phone number, whichever is best for you to get notifications. Scroll down the list and select all the topics you're interested in to receive email or text messages about. You'll be notified every time one of your topics is updated. Sign up for Notify Me, one more way to keep up with your Fitchburg government.
All right, looks like we're on the screen. Let's go ahead and get started. The October 14th meeting of the Resource Conservation Commission is now in progress at 6:31. First thing called to order, item 1A, appointment of a timekeeper. Kim, do you mind being timekeeper?
No, I do not mind, and yes, I will do it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Public appearance, item number 2 on the agenda, public appearance for non-agenda items. Looks like we don't have anyone here for a public appearance. So let's move on to item 3, approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the draft minutes from September 9, 2024 RCC meeting?
I'll move approval. I'll second.
All right, for discussion? Any discussion? I didn't have anything. If there's no discussion.
I didn't have anything.
Oh, okay. Chris, you okay?
Yep.
Okay. All right, all in favor of approving the draft minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. None opposed, draft minutes approved. Okay, moving on to agenda item 4, new business. 4A, discussed the 2024 TMDL Wind Slam Water Quality Report. Ben, want to give us an update on what's going on with the TMDL?
Yes, and I'll just share my screen here quick so I can flip around to a few different figures and exhibits that are part of the report. But before we get into the figures here, I'll just kind of explain a little bit about, this project. So this project has kind of been ongoing for the last year plus. TMDL, Wind Slam, got some nice acronyms and jargon right in the title there. So we'll just TMDL, that's total maximum daily load. So there's certain streams that the EPA has developed total maximum daily loads for. We'll talk a little bit more about exactly what that means, but basically it's how many pounds of total suspended solids and total phosphorus, the city's MS4, so our storm sewer system can discharge into that creek. So there's limits essentially on the total amount of sediment loading for these streams that are in the TMDL. And then Wind Slam is the water quality model. So this is kind of the model that is most prevalent in Wisconsin. And this is going to basically, you'll put in, say you've got a 10-acre parking lot, it'll spit out, over the course of a year, how much, total suspended solids, phosphorus you could expect to run off from that parking lot or whatever other land use you may have. So that's kind of what this whole report is based on. All the numbers as far as total pounds of sediment and phosphorus were calculated using this wind slam model. All right. So just to start here, there's 3 reach sheds or creeks, water bodies in the city of Fitchburg urban area that have a TMDL established. So we'll zoom in here. These are the 3, so they're assigned a number and then a name. So there's Lake Wingra. There's a very small area. It's about 132 acres in the northern part of Fitchburg. A lot of this was actually former town of Madison that was annexed into Fitchburg just very recently. So this is by far the smallest reach shed in Fitchburg. Then we have Nine Springs Creek, by far the largest reach shed in the Fitchburg urban area. And then the last one is Swan Creek. So these are the 3 drainage areas that we completed the wind slam modeling for. So basically what this table is telling us is how much work or how much sediment reduction we're getting from all the different best management practices in the city. So wet ponds, infiltration basins, swales, anything of that nature. So this column here, we've kind of got 2 overarching columns. There's TSS, so this is just generally sediment. And then TP, that's total phosphorus, so that's dissolved and particulate phosphorus. So we can look at this table and we can say, all right, in Lake Wingra, in this watershed, if we didn't have any BMPs or anything, how many tons of TSS could we expect in a year, to be sent to Lake Wingra? So that number is 27 tons for Lake Wingra. It's 480 tons for Nine Springs Creek and 134 tons for Swan Creek. So this next column here is the width control. So we've kind of talked about this is the baseline here with the no controls. Now we add in all the ponds and best management practices, and we look at, all right, well, now that we have these management practices, what's the total tonnage? So in Lake Wingra, it goes down to 20. So that's 7 tons of sediment that we calculated to be captured in our BMPs within the city, and that's a 26% reduction.
Hey, Ben.
And you kind of go down. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, with controls, does that mean the existing BMPs that are in place?
Correct. Yes. Excellent question. That is only the existing BMPs that are in place. So nothing that's kind of planned for the future at this point. Just what we have now.
Okay.
So we can kind of see this percent reduction. Throughout the total city, it's about 54%, but there's a pretty big variance throughout these reach sheds. Swan Creek and Nine Springs Creek are both kind of, doing quite a bit better than Lake Wingra for both TSS and phosphorus here. And again, this phosphorus column is the same thing as this TSS. So again, it's not in tons, it's in pounds, but this is amount of pounds of phosphorus if there weren't any BMPs, and this is pounds of phosphorus when we include the BMPs. So we're you know, got some work to do, and we'll take a look here and compare these numbers to what's mandated by the TMDL. So again, the TMDL has specific percent reductions for both TSS and TP that the city at some point will need to meet in order to be in compliance with the TMDL. So right now, I'll just say there isn't a set date for compliance. It's understood that it is going to take some time to get these reductions to meet TMDL compliance, and that's just due to, you know, it's costly to build new BMPs. You know, in some instances, there may just not be city land available, so you're looking at not only constructing BMPs but, you know, purchasing land. So it, you know, it's certainly can be expensive to get these percent reductions down, which is why, you know, it's understood that it is going to take a little while to get to, you know, where we need to be. In this table here, yes.
Couple questions. So the total suspended solids, what sort of solids are we talking about, and what's the primary source? And then similarly for the phosphorus, what's the primary source for that?
Yeah, so for the total suspended solids, that's more just like sand, silt, clay particles. So more, you could think of it like dirt particles, basically. So it's not a specific nutrient. It's just the sediment, the silt, the sand, the clay. And as far as sources, it's mostly, you know, erosion. So, you know, like you have an open park, you know, say it's well vegetated. All right, there's going to be some soil loss. I mean, if you've got nice grass, you could expect much less erosion than if you had, you know, a lawn with really patchy grass and a lot of exposed soils. But then there's also total suspended solids from like a parking lot. You know, parking lots, you know, the asphalt kind of deteriorates over time, and you know, if you go to kind of an older parking lot, you might see there's grit and other stuff like that, you know, in the parking lot, and that stuff will also wash off with the rain. And then as far as sources of phosphorus, you know, and in an urban environment, there's not a lot of like really concentrated sources of phosphorus. So it'd be more like, you know, people maybe use a little fertilizer on your lawn, or you know, there is just some phosphorus that binds to sediment. So phosphorus can actually bind to, you know, clays and get carried in that way. Leaves, so any kind of organic matter is going to have phosphorus in it. And the way this model works, some, you know, really smart people did some studies, and they figured out, okay, how much phosphorus washes off a parking lot compared to a high density residential area compared to a low density residential area. So, you know, people have spent a lot of time trying to figure out how much TSS, how much phosphorus can be expected to wash off of different land uses. And then based on, you know, those findings, that, you know, the formulas in the program kind of utilize that information to come up with these numbers. So of course it's not exact. It's just kind of the best estimate that we can make based on data, available data. But yeah, I mean, certainly it's not like, oh, Windslam said it's 62 pounds of phosphorus coming from this, you know, office industrial park every year. it's somewhere in that neighborhood, but it's not, an exact type of thing. If that does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, I guess I was wondering, how much of this, like for the suspended solids, it sounds like it's primarily natural stuff that just gets carried away with the storm water rather than getting stopped and staying put where it is, more so than tire particulate and brake dust and stuff from cars, although that is certainly some of it. And then I guess I was wondering on the phosphorus, is that primarily from leaves that get washed away in the stormwater system, or is that what's the biggest player there? Is that lawn fertilizer, or is it more natural stuff like the leaves?
Yeah, so it is most likely leaves. The USGS did a study in Madison, kind of a multi-year study. They looked at different neighborhoods, or I guess one neighborhood in particular, and they basically took some phosphorus samples from the water that ran off this area, and they kind of got a baseline number, and then they implemented really strict leaf controls. And then they kind of compared, all right, after we put in these really strict leaf controls, like people weren't, I think they increased maybe the amount of times they were coming through and sweeping the streets during the fall season. So they really, made a concerted effort to get the leaves off the street. And what they found was when they did that, the phosphorus levels in the runoff just went down dramatically. So it is believed that leaves are one of, if not the biggest source of phosphorus, in an urban environment. So certainly the leaves are a big piece of the puzzle, which is why the DNR actually does offer credit if you meet a certain protocol for your yard waste and leaf pickup. So, and one of those things was you have to offer it 3 times in the fall. So, starting next year, the city of Fitchburg actually will be able to take some more credit and get that, implemented into the. Technically, you don't model it. It's just a numeric credit. So the DNR, again, did a bunch of work to try to figure out exactly what percentage reduction for total phosphorus they should be giving people. And they've kind of got 2 different processes for leaf pickup. If there's one process where you can get 17% reduction, and then there's another process that the city of Fitchburg will be, kind of doing next year, which you can actually get 25% reduction in certain cases. So there's other things, the city has to provide to take that credit. Of course, if you're in a subdivision where there weren't like mature trees at all, they're not gonna give you that 25% reduction because, there's just not the leaves there. So I think it's, if you've got one mature tree per every 80 feet of curb line, then you can take advantage of that credit. So yes, I guess that's the long way of answering it, but yeah, leaves are probably the biggest source of phosphorus in an urban environment from what we know.
Yeah, it seems to make sense when you look at the Nine Springs Creek reach that it's mostly a developed area that it drains, so heavily treed, versus Swan Creek, which is more kind of a rural area out in that area, farmland and things like that. So, because I was surprised at the high number of Nine Springs Creek, the amount of phosphorus that was coming in. So.
Yep. And yeah, I mean, you drive around that area, and we'll take a look at the maps pretty soon here so you can kind of get the boundaries for these areas. But definitely Nine Springs, a lot of, slightly older neighborhoods, great mature trees, So definitely that area certainly kind of fits that description of a neighborhood that probably is getting a lot of that phosphorus from the leaves. So back to this table here, the kind of important number here in both these TSS and TP columns is the target percent reduction. So this is the percent reduction that is outlined in the TMDL. So the TMDL says, okay, the Lake Wingra reed shed, you need to get 26 or 73% TSS reduction. Right now, the city's showing 26% in the model. It's actually more than that, but we've got to get some more information on some of the BMPs that are out there, and or get maintenance agreements. So in the past, the city wasn't taking credit for private BMPs. So it was just strictly the city-owned BMPs that were being modeled. So now we've got in a bunch of these private BMPs, but the only way that we can count them is if there is a maintenance agreement with the property owner that basically outlines what they need to do each year. And it actually gives the city permission to step in and, make repairs if needed and charge it back to the property owner. So now the city gets these maintenance agreements with any new development, but that's, probably something more so that started happening in the last 10 to 15 years. So there's a lot of older BMPs, mostly in this Lake Wingra and Nine Springs Creek area, because these kind of have some older development where we know there's BMPs, but the city doesn't have a maintenance agreement for them, so we can't get them input into the model. And that's going to be the best thing, the city can do to try to meet these TSS and TP goals is just getting the maintenance agreements, because getting a maintenance agreement doesn't cost the city anything other than time. You're not doing a construction project, so that is going to be a big component of reaching these target reductions. So yeah, and in Lake Wingra, by far the farthest off from the target reductions. Again, a lot of that, the main reason for that is, this area was kind of developed quite a bit earlier where there weren't as strict stormwater standards. So when it was built out, they didn't have these standards that we were trying to meet. So we can go down to Nine Springs Creek, quite a bit better than Lake Wingra as far as the annual percent reduction for both TSS and TP, but still lagging quite a bit behind the target percent reduction. And then Swan Creek, where most of the development occurred after 2000, we're actually the city's in very good shape there. With they're meeting their percent reduction, and actually they're over the percent reduction for both TSS and TP. And for any new development, their development will meet these TSS and TP requirements. So right now, any new development has to have a TSS reduction of 80%, which of course is higher than all of these targets. And if you get 80% TSS reduction, you will have, mid 60s, low 70s TP reduction. So anything that's built from now on is only going to help, with meeting these TMDL requirements. Same goes for redevelopment. Redevelopment's going to play a very big role in the Nine Springs Creek and Lake Wingra watershed. So if the Fitchburg ordinance is pretty robust for redevelopment. The requirement is 80% TSS reduction for any redeveloped parcel. Actually, most county or most municipalities in Dane County, and the Dane County ordinance itself only requires 40% TSS reduction for redevelopment. So 80% is a pretty big difference, and eventually, I guess it wouldn't be out of line to think the city could basically do not a whole lot and just wait for parcels to redevelop, and eventually, I suppose you'd get there, but of course that would take too long and not really an appropriate way to try to meet these target reductions. So before we get on to looking at the maps, I guess are there any just kind of general questions about what a TMDL is or some of these numbers?
Ben, what is I know all these numbers come from data that was collected, water quality samples. So what's the frequency of these sample collections, and when do they do it? Do they do it during storm events, during dry events, et cetera? So, I mean, that's a lot of that. These numbers depend on the sample results.
So yeah, and again, so these numbers are spit out from the WinSlam program. So these numbers aren't based off of actual sampling completed in these reach sheds. So like I said, when they were developing this WinSlam program, probably had some graduate students or something go out and do some sampling of different creeks. I don't know specifically what streams or what areas they completed all the sampling. I think it was probably quite a few in different geographic areas. I think WinSlam is actually used outside of Wisconsin as well. So basically they just kind of looked at the data they got and then built their software around that. So yeah, and that's why it's not really an exact thing here, because these aren't based off of actual sampling data that were I should say they're not based off of actual sampling in these reach sheds. They're based off of actual sampling data, but it could be kind of anywhere, and then they just figured, well, that's probably representative to other locations.
Ben, just I guess kind of related to what Ron was asking about just now. It seems like what we've got here is, hey, we're making a mess, and as long as we clean up 70% of it, we're okay. So even if our numbers improve, if we do that by adding new developments that have better numbers, the total amount is still going to continue to increase. Is there a point where we're not allowed to, is there some particular amount of TSS or TP that is like an actual maximum number that we're not allowed to exceed, even if we clean up 80% of it?
Yeah, so that's a very good point, because there is an actual number. So in the TMDL document, there is that's the waste load allocation. It's a number of pounds for both of these, but then they just correlate that to a percent reduction across the entire watershed. And actually, if you look at agricultural land, there's going to be a lot more TSS and TP that runs off of those sites than a residential neighborhood, just because there's times of the year where you've just got huge areas of essentially bare soil. So when agricultural land develops, from a nutrient reduction standpoint, it's an urban area is probably going to have less total suspended solids and TP running off than what that agricultural area did before. So from a nutrient standpoint, development probably isn't really the worst thing, uh, for kind of reducing the total sediment and total phosphorus into the creek. Of course, if you have a 100-acre parking lot and a 100-acre farm field, there's going to be a lot more water running off that parking lot, because things can't absorb as well. But there's probably actually less sediment, and phosphorus running off. And if you go out in any kind of agricultural area in the spring after a big rainstorm and you look at the water flowing in the ditches, it is brown. It's very turbid. So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying, as things develop, if it's previously agricultural land, which is going to be the case in Fitchburg, 99% of the time, it's actually probably going to be an improvement for TSS and TP.
That was actually going to be a question I asked later on. It says land zoned and used as agricultural is excluded. And I was going to ask what kind of an effect that has on the overall numbers here. And it sounds like it's pretty substantial.
Yeah, so if we started adding those agricultural lands, into these models, and the reason we don't is Windslam is really meant for urban catchment areas. So I said, like in Windslam, you can put in all these different land uses, park, urban shopping center, office park. There isn't an agricultural one. So you really, it's kind of inappropriate to try to model the agricultural stuff in here, but if you did, yeah, I mean, it would be, you would be seeing a lot more TSS and TP, than you would if you didn't, which we didn't. And that's part of the DNR has guidance for these kind of models as far as what areas to include, what areas to exclude. So, in their guidance, they don't want us including the agricultural land. We also don't include any riparian areas. So, for example, and we'll see this again with the maps, like the whole Nine Springs E-Way, there's kind of a lot of that land that just drains straight into the creek. So it's, there's really nothing to really model there. It's kind of an open space. It's not developed. It doesn't pass through any BMPs or storm sewer. It just goes straight into the creek. So there's really not much to model there. This is really more meant to model the developed areas of Fitchburg, and that's what the Windslam tool is really meant for.
I just want to do a quick time check. It's 7:03 and we have about until 7:20 for this discussion. So I don't know how much more you need to get through, Ben.
Okay, yeah, not a ton, I don't think. And we can hop on and start taking a look at, well, I guess we'll take a look at these maps quick because they're kind of interesting here. So this one here, these are the TMDL reach sheds in Fitchburg. So there's Nine Springs in blue. Green is Swan Creek, and then there actually is another reach shed, Badfish Creek, but as you can see, it's all outside of the Fitchburg urban area, so none of that was modeled. And then up here in red, these are the two tiny little Lake Wingra areas, and again, like, this was all for the most part, town of Madison before, and so was some of this. And that's probably why maybe those numbers aren't, where we would like them to be. Part of that because it was, again, developed longer ago before the standards, but then, the city doesn't have maintenance agreements yet for all the BMPs in this area. And there's really not many. Again, it's just so small. There's just not, many BMPs there. This is just soils. So one thing you have to look at in the model is what kind of soils you have. That's going to play a part into TSS calculations, like sand. You can imagine sand kind of washing off easier than clay might. But then sand also settles out in a pond much faster than clay would. So it is kind of important to, get your soils input. So that'll have a pretty big effect on the model. So here it's pretty much in Fitchburg, it's silt and clay. This is just an overview of the different land uses. So these are all the different land uses that we can put in the wind slam model. Or some of these we can't. So again, like agriculture, that's not something we can put in the wind slam model, but we show it here. So you can see, a lot of medium density residential. We got some spots where there's some industrial. So this is what the wind slam model is kind of based off of as far as the land uses. This kind of goes into the areas that don't have to be modeled per DNR guidance. So again, riparian areas. This is, everything kind of adjacent to Nine Springs Creek. There's really nothing to put in the model there. County-owned or state-owned lands don't have to be modeled. So like the DOT, we don't count runoff from 14 there, or Verona Road. The DOT has their own water quality measures that they need to meet, and that's completely on them. We also have internally drained areas. So basically, I think this might be a good example. This is Hillside Heights. So if you've ever driven down Irish, just east of Fish Hatchery, there's the Hillside Heights Park, and then there's a pond there with a tree in the middle. Everything just kind of drains into there and stays there. It's not typically being discharged into a creek or anything. So since it's not getting into the system, there's really nothing to count there. And then state-owned lands. Again, they've got their own things they need to do. We don't model that. That's kind of on them to fulfill their requirements. But everything in green, in this light green, was analyzed as part of this exercise here. This is just kind of if there's curb and gutter or if there's roadside ditches. The city can also take credit for any kind of street sweeping that's completed in areas where there is curb and gutter. So we need to know, all those areas. This is just kind of a map of all the different BMPs that are in the area. It's kind of, you really got to zoom in here, but, all these little dots and speckles are the different BMPs within the city. Depending on what kind they are, they're a different color. Like here's, Swan Creek, the crossings, McKee Farms Park, and then tons of little private ones that are just, kind of all throughout the city. And so this is kind of a cool image that shows, what areas generally have the highest TSS loads without controls. You can see it, industrial areas or kind of office park areas in red do have, generally more TSS that's anticipated to run off than, for example, an open undeveloped space. So like here by the Lacey Haight Farm roundabout, kind of by like all those bird apartments, I call them, the Osprey, the Talon, that's all pretty much undeveloped open space, or good chunks of it are. Like here, McKee Farms Park, that's a darker color green, less runoff because it's just grass. So that just kind of shows in graphical form, where the runoff is coming. This is the same thing for TP.
Hey, Ben?
Yeah.
In that extreme northwest portion of the area, study area, where does that drain to the Sugar River, or is that still part of it goes into Nine Springs?
So this part here does all go into Nine Springs.
Okay.
Yeah, the Verona Road is kind of like partially the cutoff there. Then once you get across, all of this goes into Badger Mill Creek and then Sugar River, like you said. So all this area is kind of that Sugar River.
Okay.
And even so is this is kind of like Story Creek, but then that also does feed into the Sugar River. And right now there's not a TMDL established for Badger Mill Creek, but there certainly could be at some point, and when that time comes, if it does, then we would basically complete the same exercise and start to add all the BMPs out here into the model as well. Let's see if there's any other good maps here. I guess I'll talk about kind of next steps. Go into the recommendations here.
13.
And I guess I'll just show, so here's a list of all the different BMPs that were modeled in each one of the reach sheds. So on this side here is the most downstream BMP. So this would be like the BMP that is the last stop before it gets discharged into a creek. Then you can look, maybe find one that everyone's familiar with. So McKee Farms Park, everyone knows there's some big ponds out at McKee Farms Park. This one right here, the Schumann Wet Pond. This is the one that the Schumann Greenway dumps into. It's kind of by the new assisted living, senior living homes that were just recently constructed. And then you can see here there's all these different smaller BMPs that run off drains into first before it's discharged into the Schumann Wet Pond. And then over here, this is, how many acres drain into each one of these little basins. So we try to get as many as we possibly can, even some of these small ones where it's only like, half an acre or even less. We got to take as much, get as much credit as we can and try to get the model as reflective of actual conditions as we possibly can. And I think it says in this report, we've got, there's probably another 100 BMPs, privately owned BMPs throughout the city that we could consider adding. Some of them definitely we need to, and it's just a matter of getting a maintenance agreement. Some of them are more like a downspout rain garden where, sure, it's a BMP, but it's probably not even worth the effort of putting it into the model because it's just so small, like on the order of a few hundred square feet draining to it. So there's a lot of little rain gardens like that. But that is kind of one of the next steps, is going back and reaching out to the property owners that do have the more significant private BMPs and making sure that we do get maintenance agreements with them so we can take credit. And for Lake Wingra, again, that's 120 acres. I know there's one fairly large BMP kind of by, I don't know if anyone's familiar with the Delta Beer Lab, off of Badger Road. That's one. If we got that one added, that's probably going to be a huge impact to the TSS reduction numbers. So that's kind of like the low hanging fruit, is trying to get those ones added in. Because there's, there are a few out there that it would be worth getting. So that's kind of one of the big recommendations.
Hey, Ben, on those tables, I know this is the draft final. Can you have AECom put the column headers on each page for that table? I mean,
Oh yeah, yep, like right up
since
there.
it's
So you
already
know what it
always
is.
scrolling back and looking.
Yep. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we'll have them do that. That'll make it easier to look through. So yeah, we'll just get into the kind of recommendation section here. So big one, getting the stormwater maintenance agreements for BMPs that don't have them. That's, again, no cost other than time for the city to do. Something we got to do. And then the other piece was looking at, what are some other BMPs that the city could look at constructing. So, we looked at areas where, the city already owns the land. And it looks like there's some area that's not being treated that could be treated. So we came up with 10 future BMPs. Some of them are pretty simple, as far as what the work involved is. So like these two retrofits, like the Seminole Hills Pond, it was just a matter of taking a look at the outlet structure and putting in something a little bit different to try to eke out, some more TSS and TP reductions in the model. Some of them are, a little bit more costly. So, for example, this Dolly bioretention facility was, a potential bioretention or infiltration basin that could be, constructed north of the Seminole Village Pond. So that's the pond north of the McKee Seminole Highway intersection, on the northeast corner of that intersection. But when you look at the numbers, so like, okay, say we build these, what kind of additional TSS and TP removals can we get? And I think you'll notice that for the most part, they're pretty small. And that just kind of goes to show, even if you did all of these, the city would still not be meeting TMDL requirements for the Nine Springs and Wingra watersheds or reed sheds. I think we've got some cost associated with each one of these. We just did a quick, cost estimate, and then looked at, all right, based on that estimated cost, how many dollars is it per ton of TSS or per pound of total phosphorus? And, these are significant numbers. Some of these ones, I mean, no one's going to pay $381,000 to remove a pound or a ton of TSS. It's just not the most cost effective thing. So, for example, the city is participating in Yahara Winds. That's the adaptive management plan that all municipalities are not all, but most municipalities are participating in because they aren't meeting the TMDL requirements. So the city basically pays in $100-some thousand annually to have other kind of more agricultural based practices constructed, like grass waterways through agricultural fields, or having farmers do kind of no-till farming where they're not disturbing the soil as much. And when you look at those practices, the cost per pound or cost per ton is far below these numbers. So in an urban area, it can just get really expensive to try to eke out more of these more TSS and TP reduction. So, I think that's definitely got to be a priority, going forward. Trying to get some of these projects done, looking out for any kind of new innovative approaches. So maybe like the DNR is looking at more proprietary methods. For example, you can take iron filings and mix iron filings into a sandy bioretention basin, and then the phosphorus will actually bind to that iron. So, there's not really a way to model that yet. Like I said, the DNR is supposed to have some guidance out for some of those other, kind of more non-structural, additive type practices. So that's another avenue that might be quite a bit more cost effective than some of these options we were able to look at now.
Hey, Ben.
Yes.
These BMPs are mostly hard construction BMPs. Did they look at other types of BMPs? Since leaves are a source of the phosphorus in the Nine Springs reed shed, should they be looking at potentially other things, like better ways that we can collect the leaves, vacuum trucks, more frequent sweeping of the streets, things like that we don't have to spend, several millions of dollars to build some of these BMPs? I mean, it seems like that would be effective if leaves are the main problem in the Nine Springs reed shed. I think, to me, we should focus on, well, what can we do to control the leaves getting into the waterways instead of building all these detention ponds and everything. Seems like that would make more sense.
Yeah.
I don't know what a vacuum truck costs, but I sure it's definitely less than $2 million and $1 million and all these other costs here, construction costs. So
yeah, and that is something we can take credit for. So in the model, we do have street sweeping built in. So I think in the model, we said that, each street is swept every 4 weeks with the vacuum assisted sweeper. If you drop that down to every street was swept every 2 weeks, I think that'd be kind of an interesting thing to do, actually, and just rerun all the models, or even 3 weeks, and see what that would do. then you just have the cost of a sweeper and fuel. I mean, it does kind of get expensive because fuel and street sweepers are kind of expensive, and then you've got to pay to dispose of everything. But yeah, no, that's a good suggestion. I'll have to run that and see what kind of impact that would have. And like I said, so now or not now, but in 2025, the city of Fitchburg will be eligible to receive some additional credits for basically a leaf management program. So the thing was, the city has to provide at least 3 yard waste or leaf collection opportunities in the fall to get this credit. Whereas, right now it was 2, so couldn't do it. But yeah, that's gonna, I think, have a pretty significant impact. And again, it's just way cheaper than, having to build a whole new giant wet pond or something, to try to get those reductions increased. Not all of these ones are wild. I mean, some of these ones were just modifying the outlet structure of the pond. So you're not building a new pond, you're just kind of playing around with how the water is released from the pond. Those ones are probably worth doing. But yeah, I mean, any kind of other non-structural practice, whether it's the leaf management or increased street sweeping, could be a little bit more attractive from that cost perspective. And again, like I said, some of it is just going to happen without the city needing to step in and spend money, just through redevelopment. So as things redevelop, specifically in the, Nine Springs, probably has the most area where redevelopment is likely to occur. Once that happens, that's going to have a pretty big impact, on the TMDL or on the Windslam model as well. And that's, no cost to the city. It's just property owners having to comply with the redevelopment requirements.
Hey, Ben, I had a question under 5.1, under annual activities. It talks about public education and outreach. Do you know kind of what that all entails? Because kind of following up on what Ron said, that might also be something to incorporate into, the street sweeping, but also doing some public education and outreach on what the issues are, what's causing it, and how you can get involved and help prevent this.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And even though unfortunately there's not a way to take credit in the model for what public outreach and education stuff has been done, but obviously in reality, that could have a pretty big impact. If you're trying to teach people about the leaves, keeping them out of the street, or maybe trying a different fertilizer, one that doesn't have phosphorus or nitrogen in it. Even though we can't take credit and show that, in reality, that is a great thing, because that's going to have real impacts if people are kind of taking those things into consideration.
So it's 7:28.
Right now,
so just wanted to do a time
oh,
check.
sure. I guess it's a lot here, and just for the sake of time, does anyone have any other questions or thoughts maybe?
Oh, one question I have. Can this information be shared with the public, this report?
Yeah, so once we finalize it, we'll put this on the city website.
I mean, can this draft final be shared? Because I know Lake Wabisa
Conservation Association would like to see this draft report.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can send that to them.
Okay.
We'll just
Can
have
you
to.
send it to, can you send it
I'll
to
just have to
Carolyn?
throw a disclaimer on here that, the DNR will just have to kind of review the models and stuff. So there could be some small changes, but yeah, I'd be certainly happy to share this with anyone that's would like to take a look.
It's already in the public,
Public
because
domain.
it's part of our agenda packet
Agenda,
tonight,
yeah,
so.
okay. Okay,
You can send them a direct link to just the
Yeah.
Wind Slam report.
okay. All right, are we done?
Yeah, if there's not any other questions, the rest of the report here, which we didn't get through, is kind of more like printouts from the model. So, this is kind of, a screenshot of one of the little pop-ups in the model where you kind of fill in the information about, different BMPs and, there's some cost estimate stuff. This was just kind of a list of all the different BMPs in the city. And then again, here, I'll need to have them put on the column headers so people know what this is. But kind of like, if it was modeled and if it wasn't, why. So, here we didn't model this cornerstone one bioretention because we didn't have a stormwater maintenance agreement for it. So that's kind of that. And yeah, just some older data. If anyone, is taking a look at this and has any other questions, of course, feel free to shoot me an email or something. I'm more than happy to discuss this in more detail.
Okay. If we have no further questions, we can move on to item 4B on the agenda. That's review of the draft 2025 solid waste collection calendar. Ben?
Yep, I'm just pulling it up here.
I know we got the 3 leaf collection dates in, or brush collection, yard waste collection.
Yes. All right, here we go. So this is the draft. Looks very similar to what you've seen in the past, but now there's 3 yard waste pickups here. I guess does anyone have thoughts on like what dates you guys would think would be good dates to have yard waste pickups? Right now it was just kind of every other week starting in October into November. I don't know that I kind of wanted to get this November 24th.
Well, if we look at what's going on right now, this is the week of October, 13th you have it. There's a lot of leaves still on the trees.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I wonder if we should kind of shift it a little bit. I mean, with climate change, the leaves are probably going to hang on a little longer than usual. So maybe, 2 in November, the 1 in October.
Yeah,
When is this due? I mean, we could kind of just pay attention this year to when
Yeah.
significant leaf drop occurs and maybe base it on that.
it will have to be finalized by the end of October, I'll say, because I will include, I've got to send out basically a mailer kind of to citywide to everyone that receives this service to kind of explain what the changes are with the elimination of the unlimited recycling and then the 30 yard waste pickup. And I would really like to get this calendar included in the mailer. And then I do need to let Pelletary know.
Well, regardless, we should pay attention this
Yeah.
year so that we know how
Yeah.
to build a
Point.
proper calendar next year.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, because we can always, do something different in 26 for sure.
Because I think next week we'll start having a lot of leaves falling.
Yeah, we had
Yeah,
a
so maybe
pretty good wind yesterday,
Yeah.
and there's still not a lot of leaves on the ground.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of hard to, because you go November 24th, and who knows what the weather is going to be then. You could have
Yeah.
people get their leaves out, and then it
Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
snows.
I was thinking about, October 20th and then maybe November 3rd and 17th, having 2 in November as potential dates.
And just shift everything by 1 week.
What's that?
Just shift those 3.
Shift it by 1 week, yeah.
Yeah, I think that would make a lot of sense. And you could just get a little bit later into the year. I think something must be wrong with the tree I've got in my yard, because all the leaves have been off of it for like a week. That's probably why I had the early stuff on here. Like, oh geez, the leaves are falling like crazy. But no, that makes sense. Any other suggestions, thoughts, things to include on this calendar?
I had a couple of editorial things.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want me to talk through them or just send you an email, but there's like some of the January 2nd is not yellow for some reason, and neither is the 13th. And there's other blocks that are yellow but don't have numbers in them. July 3rd is highlighted as a holiday instead of July 4th.
Oh yeah, yep. Yeah, I see that. I see. Okay. Yeah, if you wanna, I guess just shoot me an email with anything you catch.
Sure.
Yeah, that should be yellow. Okay. Yeah, I see. Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you for that.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thanks, Ben. Okay, let's move on to item 4C, draft 2024 RCC annual report.
Yeah, okay, so just kind of got to start here. As far as the events go, I know we had our pollinator talk, we had the EV 101, recycling day, waterway cleanup, and BYOB, bring your own bag event. Was there anything else that I forgot there?
Ben, do you want to include the, I don't know if we would include this in here or not, but the paper, or the recycling challenge, the plastic recycling challenge that we're doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we'll definitely include that. I'll find a good spot for it. I don't know if might not be technically an event, but I think there's, the solid waste and refuse and recycling. Oh, I've got it in there. Worked with the
there you
Fitchburg
go.
Lions Club. Sweet. But no, there weren't any other events though, correct? That I'm just not
Yeah, I can't think of any
thinking
other
of.
ones.
Okay. I'll have to talk to Phil about some of the energy conservation and renewable energy initiatives. I guess we could.
Seems like we don't
probably
talk
add
about,
something.
seems like we don't talk much about the sustainability plan.
Say, should we ask
Yes.
more that we had, workshops, we had a draft plan? Seems like
Yeah,
there's
we'll get some more
information
info.
here. We just says we hired a consultant.
Honestly,
They've done a lot of work.
sustainability plan could probably be its own section. It's kind of an important thing. Yeah, no, that's a good call. I think we could even talk about maybe some of the advocacy for the sustainability practices at the proposed police facility. I think RCC definitely had a big role in that, as far as making recommendations for what to be or what to include there. That'd be a good one.
About increasing the
Have to
number
update.
of, increasing the number of dumpsters at the recycling facility. Did we do that this year? Cardboard
We
dumpsters?
did not. We did not.
Oh, we didn't increase the number?
No, it was it's still 10.
Okay,
So it's been 10, I think, for a few years now.
okay. Only other comment I had on this report was under the other committee involvement. I think you should put yourself down there for the LWC Lake Management Steering Committee. You're on that.
Oh, yeah, I've got that one on there.
You do? Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Second.
I even wrote this down. Wow.
Right.
The list of,
Any other thoughts?
well, the list of Fitchburg Star articles includes some future ones, but does not include the one that was in the September.
Yeah, this needs to be updated, this whole news outreach. I meant to highlight that. Yeah, there are a couple things that are highlighted that well, we don't have it all figured out yet. I think because there was going to be an article in October, but I don't think it made it because of the election information, and so yeah, this whole section I'll just have to highlight and go back to it. All right, and any other thoughts?
No, I think it looks good.
Yeah, that's good.
Definitely a good start.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay, if no other comments, move on to item 4D, which is the draft 2025 RCC calendar of events.
All right, so I guess the main thing, I was hoping to discuss with this agenda item is talk a little bit more about focus for 2025. I left a lot of this stuff, the same from the 2024 calendar of events. Didn't make a ton of changes to this yet. Just kind of wanted to get folks' thoughts, high level, things they'd like to see be a focus for next year.
Yeah, I've been trying to think about what we could do. To me, it seems like if we could just do one major thing each year, accomplishment, like the dark sky ordinance, that's a pretty big thing to have. If we could do something like that, a focus each year on something similar, but it's a major thing, it takes a lot of, more than RCC involvement to get it accomplished. So, but something that we can keep pushing like you've been pushing through on the dark sky ordinance. Now, what could we do in 2025 that might be something similar? Is it a salt-wise type thing or some type of thing to educate the store owners and property owners about, proper use of salt of their commercial businesses and things like that? Because they still use a lot of salt around the commercial businesses around here.
And I don't know what we need to do to stop it. You know, unless you put some type of ordinance out there and they get a ticket, but I don't think you want to do that because it can discourage some businesses.
Well, and I suspect they're probably pretty generous with the salt because
they
they're
are.
afraid of liability.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
slips and falls on their property.
Right. But do they need to leave it, that they could sweep it up when there's no event coming and put it back out, you know, sweep it up, put it in a bucket. When another event's coming, put it out, spread it around. So, I mean, having some type of educational thing like that.
I think,
I know over at Pick and Save, those store owners over there, they just, I mean, the businesses along there put a lot of salt out, and they leave it out all winter. And it doesn't have to be left out all winter.
there are contractors that have gone through the SaltWise training, similar to what many municipal crews have gone through as far as, okay, what's the proper application rate depending on, temperature, and some other factors. Would it be appropriate for the city to send out a list of, hey, these are, just kind of a thing, again, hey, salt, pretty harmful for our water resources. Here's a list of contractors that, have taken some kind of a training regarding salt use, or is that maybe not an appropriate thing for the city to do?
I don't know, is there a way that we could reward the, business owners that do the right thing? Get a little sticker in your window or something like that? I don't know.
And
Some
I guess,
sort of incentive, yeah.
what's the scale of this? Like, if I think of my own house, I think, 20 years ago, I bought a 10 or 20 pound bag of salt and I haven't used it all yet. But every 6 weeks, I go through a 50-pound block of salt with my water softener. So, I mean, am I choosing the wrong battle to fight here?
Well, so water softener salt is a bigger source of salt. It's really all going to Badfish Creek because that's where the MMSD
Sure.
discharge is. But yeah, there is more salt that gets used in water softeners. So that's another big thing that could be part of it. Could be kind of just a general salt use that include initiative or trying to promote, more so than just, the anti-icing ice melt salt. You can include that too because it is, an equally or greater significant source, especially for Badfish Creek, which, is in Fitchburg, or the headwaters are in Fitchburg. But yeah, that is a serious, and there was at one point, I think MMSD had offered a program, maybe you could get some kind of a rebate on a new water softener, or maybe it was they would cover the cost or partially to have someone come out and calibrate your water softener to make sure you weren't, using more salt than you actually needed. So I'll have to look into that program and see if that's, I don't know, I don't think it's still active, but maybe that's something that would be brought back if it isn't. But yeah, certainly that, that's something we could look into, and kind of promoting that would be good.
A quick Google search says that salt-free water softeners do exist. I have no idea whether they're effective or not, but is that something we should look into and possibly have a community event, an educational event? Because, like I say, I just was at Woodman's less than a week ago and I grabbed 100 pounds of salt, and it's going to last me a couple months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the water is just so hard here. You really kind of need to soften it so your appliances don't, get all gunked up with
Right.
with carbonate and stuff. So people are going to soften their water. It's just kind of the nature of getting it from from the aquifer. There's just a high mineral content. But yeah, that'd be interesting. I could see maybe doing some kind of event at the library or something, to kind of talk about, the different available technologies or different options to make sure you're not buying more salt and spending more money on salt than you actually need, and really just kind of getting folks dialed in on basically using as little of as salt as they can in their water softeners. I think people would probably find that kind of an interesting topic.
And I don't know how big we want to
Yeah, I would agree with you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good point, Ben. Like something that people don't really love to do. Like, it's one of my least favorite activities, and I'm sure even for people, our older population, it's probably even a less popular activity. Getting the salt down to the water softener. And so, I think we certainly could do an event on that. Like, just in terms of history, like, we always have like a number of things, we try to maybe, what are the 5 things we're going to focus on, instead, like, I like your idea though, Ron, of, kind of, maybe, even highlighting one of those things that we want to do a little bit more. And I think probably the last example of that was we did an anti-idling campaign pretty hard in 2012, where we extensively did went all in on a campaign to try to get people to idle less. So we could pick one of those projects where we really want to kind of focus the efforts for each year. But like, I think just the nature of sustainability being such a broad topic and so many things that interest, even the, commissioners that serve on it, we're always going to, want to hit everything, really want to take a year off from, limiting water usage or energy efficiency or, all the different topics that we cover, so I kind of like the concept that you have, Ron, of, maybe picking one thing to, really kind of go a little bit more all in on. And, we could kind of determine what that topic is through additional discussion. 'Cause I'm sure this is just the start of kind of our 2025 calendar events, but people could think about that between now and our next meeting.
Yeah.
Well, and I think also if we do something, whatever it is, if we do something either around the water softener, salt, or the, salt, in the winter, just giving alternatives to people and having, helping to educate on the impact of the salt usage, because I don't think people make that connection, in terms of what it actually is doing. So I think that's something that would be very interesting, and then, figuring out, like, are there other communities, what are they doing? Are there other, options out there? Like you just said, there's salt-free water softener, but what does that mean? Are the
How
new
effective
homes
is
being
it?
built, are they using those? Who knows,
Right. Well, and so speaking of new homes, that was what I was going to ask before. How big do we want to swing here? If we, should we have an event that's like more general? Here, here's a whole variety of sustainability topics you can think about. First of all, new construction should no longer be hooked up to fossil fuels. For God's sake, it's 2025, and we're going to build brand new stuff and pump natural gas into it. That just doesn't make sense anymore. We have in Wisconsin pretty lax building codes, and developers are loath to exceed those codes for fear of pricing people out of the homes they build. But it's still something that we should get it into people's minds, because if they're gonna, if somebody is involved with the construction of their home, they should be made aware that, hey, there are standards in the world that are like 7 times as thermally efficient as what we do here in the state of Wisconsin. You know, stuff like that. Just if you're thinking about new construction, here's a variety of things to think about.
So I guess we have, you know, maybe we can think about this over the next couple of months, and in January come back with some ideas so we can, you know, finalize the calendar. A lot of good ideas thrown out tonight to talk about.
So are you asking us to bring ideas for next month's meeting, or
Yeah, just bring
email
some
them
ideas
to
for
you
next-
in the
no, let's-
interim?
If you had any, yeah, you can send it to me, but let's next month make sure we have an agenda that we can just talk about the 2025 focus.
Okay.
Perfect.
On the calendar in July, you have presentation of citywide TMDL water quality modeling update. Is that something, is that different than what we are doing?
No, that was just a leftover. I think I had planned to give the presentation I just gave in July of this year, and it just took a little longer to get everything put together. So that was just a holdover. Yeah.
I mean, is the council going to hear results of the TMDL modeling work and recommendations? So
I would like to present that at maybe a committee of the whole.
Yeah, this is something that deserves at least a full 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's one of the more important documents for the city's, MS4. It really kind of summarizes, where the city is at in terms of, meeting these water quality requirements, and, how are we going to actually meet them in the years to come. So I think absolutely that would be a good thing to bring in front of council, because it, funding some of these projects, it's just going to have to happen in order to to be compliant with the TMDL.
I mean, I could see this at the sustainability report being something that would go to committee as a whole.
Yes.
So how do we coordinate that? Because I remember last time Randy reached out to me, he asked me to give a presentation on what RCC did for the year, so.
Well, yeah, so typically council president is in charge of deciding what topics we see at the committee of the whole. So you would talk to Gabriella, and I could talk to her as well.
Okay.
And figure out when we could get this on there. And yeah, it might be nice to have this and the sustainability plan, whenever that's finalized, at the same committee of the whole meeting.
Yeah.
That would be great. Well, I think this report should be finalized and reviewed by DNR probably. Well, I guess I don't want to say the DNR is going to be able to review it all in a month, because it's lengthy. But I would imagine before the end of the year, it'll be final. So maybe sometime in early 2025, one of the first cows that they have would be a good one to target.
Okay. You would reach out to Gabriella, or I can do it, send her an email.
If we both do it, then.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Any other questions or comments on the calendar 2025? Okay. If not, let's move on to agenda item 5, old business. 5A, the fall shred event recap and discussion. Ken?
Yeah, so September 14th, we held our fall event. had a really pretty good turnout. It was kind of steady throughout the day. It wasn't ever we didn't have, super long lines of cars the entirety of the event, but there were always people filtering through. So as far as kind of the weight totals, we got about 9,900 pounds of electronics and 5,600 pounds of paper. So you can see, that is somewhat comparable to some of the past events we've had here. If we look at 2023 fall, so last year's fall event, we actually got higher totals for both electronics and paper than we did in 2023. We did get less for both electronics and paper than we did in the spring of this year, but overall it was I think a great turnout. And yeah, I kind of starting to look at dates for the 2025 events. Kim was volunteering. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Kim, or thought or noticed about how the event went this fall?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think you and Phil continue to do a good job of, like putting signs up and putting up the pylons of where people should drive. But you even saw, people, even when you tell people where to go, they just bypass it. So I think we had talked about maybe some additional signs, as we're entering, and, maybe the 2 lanes of, this side is electronics, this side is paper. If it starts to, I think the spring is always usually one of our heavier ones. But I don't know, I felt like it went well. Like you said, it was very steady the whole time. And I think the Badger game that day did impact some folks. There were some people who got there, even earlier than we normally start. They were lining up and our truck wasn't even there yet. So, but overall, I feel like I was pleased with how many people showed up, because it definitely was higher than last fall.
Yeah, so the Badger game, I think you could tell it did start to get a little bit slower towards the end there. I'm sure due to the Badger game, but it was still a pretty well attended event despite that.
Yeah, the amount of paper collected was higher than the last 2 falls, so that's a good sign. Yeah, thank you everyone for your contributions. Unfortunately, I had to miss it, but look forward to the spring one. Anything else? Okay, let's move on to agenda item 5B, the dark sky lighting ordinance update.
All right. So included in the packet was the current draft. I did receive some comments back from Deanna, our planning and zoning administrator, very, very recently after getting this packet out. So I do have a few other comments now that I can use to hopefully create the final draft. I really would like to get this in front of RCC in November as actually a resolution to adopt a new ordinance and try to get this thing put to bed this year. But it has been, I guess, a little bit of a time-consuming process at times. Just this impacts potentially a lot of different departments, other than just Public Works, but
planning, of course, as I mentioned, and building inspection. So there, were a lot of, different departments that wanted to take a look at this and provide their feedback and make sure that there wasn't anything that they thought, would be an issue or, cause them to have a lot more work to do when we review these plans. So I think what we have here is still a pretty a very good ordinance as far as basically just laying out some pretty easy to follow requirements for lighting designers. Um, Here we just kind of have some basic definitions. Kind of one of the important ones here being full cutoff. So again, this is there has to be some kind of a shielding with any kind of light fixture. So there's not light being reflected up. It's essentially being pointed down below horizontal. So this is kind of one of the big pieces of this ordinance, requiring that lights are going to be full cutoff. And then there's just some other various, kind of standard definition. What does new lighting mean? What does, what is whatever accent architectural lighting. I think some of the comments were they did want to remove a few of these definitions. I think they didn't want to define like curfew and security lighting maybe, but that's fine. I think we could probably live with that. So I'll get into the kind of meat of it here. So right now, this ordinance would apply for any new development, building, structure that require a building permit, or any kind of addition or modification of more than 50% or more in terms of either dwelling units, floor area, parking spaces, or well, I guess that's really it. And then the other kind of piece of that is, someone wouldn't be able to just do like 10% at a time and not have to comply with this. So someone would be keeping track. And once they got to 50%, anything over that, then they would have to, comply with the standards outlined in this ordinance. There are some exempt lighting, so things where this ordinance isn't going to apply. Some basic stuff, mostly code required stuff, code required exit signs, lighting for stairways and ramps, anything regulated by the FAA or other kind of agency, interior lighting, of course, swimming pool, holiday lighting. So, people can put out, their holiday string lights or whatever they want for, Halloween or Christmas, temporary stuff that, firefighters or EMS may need to use, any lighting in the public right of way, just because that's going to be based more off of traffic safety standards, and then like spotlights for flags and such. That was another comment. I was asked to just remove this state and national flag lighting spotlights. That was a comment from our planning department. I think they just wasn't really something that comes up a lot, I guess. But here we go, the general requirements. So this is that full cutoff. So any kind of outdoor lighting, be it residential, commercial, industrial,
they've got to have full cutoff light fixtures, so fully shielded, directly downward. The other piece is kind of light trespass. So this is how much light can shine on adjacent property. So here this is called out at 0.4 foot candles, at the adjacent property line. So sites wouldn't be able to exceed that. This 0.4 foot candles is kind of a standard light trespass standard in the Dane County area. You'll see a lot of 0.4, 0.5. And then any other kind of light that is flashing or flickering, or it could be a distraction, would also be prohibited. So we did retain these tables. So this is kind of an important piece of it. So this is for any kind of open parking facility, which is typically going to have quite a few light fixtures. Here we define what the maximum number of foot candles is. 4 different types of parking lots. So this level of activity is defined up here again. So, low activity, that would be maybe, a school, office park, medium activity, a shopping center, hospitals, things of that nature. And then high activity would be if there was, and we might not even really have a high activity in Fitchburg, but any kind of parking lot where there's going to be a pretty huge amount of cars going around. One comment that was made by planning, they wondered if we could get rid of the minimum foot candles and just have a maximum amount of foot candles. And I don't know if folks have thought on that. I mean, I think folks have thoughts on that. I think, as far as dark sky is concerned, you probably could really just have, a limit on what the maximum amount of foot candles is. But it is kind of typical to include a minimum as well. But I suppose if the goal is really, more so aimed at protecting our night skies rather than just kind of having a uniform aesthetic, then I don't see why removing the minimum foot candles would be much of a loss for the intent of this ordinance.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. I don't think we need that minimum column.
I think it's,
the
maximum is important, like you said, from the dark sky aspect, which is what this is all about. The minimum would be important from a public safety sort of a perspective, which is outside the purview of this ordinance, right?
Yeah.
Right. So they can, the developers, they can, decide what they need, as far as lighting goes, what the minimum amount is on their own. They know what they'll need for safety. Probably not something we need to include. So I'll go ahead and remove that since that was requested.
And that would be both of those tables, A and B.
Yeah, just getting rid of the minimum, and then we would also get rid of the uniformity ratio as well. That was another request, and again, that has more to do with just kind of having a uniform aesthetic for lighting by enforcing, a maximum uniformity ratio. So if we got rid of that too, again, that doesn't really impact, the dark sky nature of this ordinance, in my opinion. So then we got just some other general information on, other types of lighting outside of parking lots. So building and accent architectural, again, just saying it has to conform to the general requirements of this this code. They can't be mounted, above the roof, basically. Again, some more information for display lot or area lighting. I was asked to remove this section as well. But I think that's maybe it isn't a common thing. I mean, the only kind of really display lot or area lighting is probably up on the north side of Fitchburg with the dealerships up there. But because there are those dealerships, I am a little bit hesitant to remove this. So I think that's just something we're going to have to talk through a little bit more internally. I think it would be beneficial to keep this, but it might be something we have to kind of compromise on if there's a real desire to eliminate this section.
Well, wouldn't those areas be grandfathered in? I mean, they're not new.
Right, they would be, but if they were to ever, replace a lot of their lights, like I said, so if they were replacing more than 50% of their fixtures, per this ordinance, they would have to, comply with the lighting standards. So it could impact them if they, were to ever, get new fixtures. But I have not been, I can't say that I've really spent a lot of time in that area at night. So I don't really know what their lighting setup looks like now, if it's causing a lot of light pollution or not. I guess I really don't know what their current lighting looks like out there. But yeah, something internally I think we're gonna have to figure out. So this next section here is basically just saying what has to be submitted. So they've got to submit a cut sheet of any of their light fixtures. So that's where we'll be able to see if it's fully shielded and indeed a full cutoff fixture. And then they'll have to show their photometric calculation. So this is kind of just like a site plan that has a bunch of kind of contours on it for a different amount of foot candles. So this is what we would look at to see, if they're over that, 0.4 foot candle light spill over the property line. So folks would have to submit this. And then the last piece here is special permits. So, I think that the best example here is, and maybe the most relevant one would be for sports fields. I don't know exactly what the status of the Edgewood sports complex is or where that's at, but that could potentially be a site where their stadium lighting is it's special lighting. It's not your typical lighting. There's got to be a little bit more of a different way to go about permitting that. So that's kind of what this special permit section is, and trying to come up with a process for those special cases where they are going to have some stronger lighting. So here, it does still talk about utilizing the fully shielded luminaires, potentially side shielded as well. I think we'd probably, still need them to comply with the light spill or the light trespass requirement of 0.4 foot candles. Here, and that just kind of talks about enforcement and penalties. So if someone submits their lighting plan and lighting cut sheets, and it's all good. They're all fully shielded. Their photometric plan, meets the standards. But then, someone goes out there and, they've installed something other than what was approved, then they could, potentially have some penalties. So that's just kind of what this section is. But yeah, I mean, I think this is really very close to what we'll see move forward. Again, the big comments that I got back was trying to, get rid of the minimum, maybe getting rid of this display lot or area lighting. That was really kind of it. So I think we're in a pretty good spot. Like I said, really hoping we can get this in front of council in November, and again back to you guys in the November meeting. If that's not going to be possible, then I really do think January. I think we do have some support with Mayor Julia, having some interest in getting this ordinance passed. So yeah, like I said, November is still going to be kind of the goal here, and I'll share any drafts that come along after this one. Again, hoping there's just going to be one more draft, and we can get a final on it, and hopefully take it from there. So I guess, are there any questions on this draft?
I've got a couple questions. Is there any sort of a timing aspect to this? So like all new construction needs to comply. Anytime you do more than 50%, you need to comply. Is there anything that says within 10 years or 20 years, whatever, every site in the city needs to comply, regardless of whether you've done any upgrades?
So that was in one of the first renditions of this, and that was asked to be removed. I don't think we're going to get that.
Okay. Then the other part was my favorite bit of verbiage in there that said, lighting shall be shielded or installed so that there is not a direct line of sight between the light source and a point 5 feet off the ground at the property boundary. What happened to that? Because I think anytime a neighbor is going to complain, it's because when they are on their side of the street, they can see those bright lights. They got direct line of sight right to the light source.
Yeah, I will have to review that and see if that's something we can get added back in. Because you're right, that is that's what people are going to notice.
Any other comments? Thanks, Ben. I really appreciate all your hard work in getting this marshaled through. It's looking really good. Thank you for all your hard work.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay, let's move on to agenda item 6, Bill, council update.
Yeah. Budget season is in full swing. Amendments were due on the 10th, and they'll be discussed at an upcoming council meeting. There was very little wiggle room in the budget. The mayor used all but about $630 worth of levy limit. Of course, we do have our referendum on the November 5th ballot. And there's 3 more public information meetings. So if you haven't been to one of those live yet, I encourage you to attend. There's one this Thursday at Fire Station number 3 from 6 to 7:30. Next Monday at Four Winds Farm from 6 to 7:30, and then a virtual meeting Monday, October 8th from 6 to 7:30. And if you want, you can review all of the recordings, or FACTv was there to make recordings of all the previous meetings, so you should be able to see those on YouTube or the government channel. Couple things of interest to the RCC. Council has approved the purchase of 3 new EVs for the city to replace aging fleet vehicles. I believe one of them is for the assessing department and 2 more maybe for the police department, non-squad vehicles.
Do we know what type of vehicles, EVs, great trucks?
Yeah, one is an Ioniq and then 2 Mustang Mach-E's.
Okay.
Yeah, I forget how, so the Ioniq is not quite as heavy duty as the Mach-E's. They can take worse terrain, and that was a requirement.
Okay.
Couple of developments just to keep you aware of. There's a 110 unit multifamily building that's going to go up in Uptown Crossing, or Uptown Fitchburg, just off of Central Park Place near the rail line there, out by the bird apartments, that neck of the woods. Where there's early stage planning for a YMCA, which would be just off of McKee Road between Spoke Drive and the Badger State Trail. The Jamestown Quarry multifamily housing development is moving forward. That's 270 some market rate apartments. And that area is kind of interesting because it's right next to the lot where Verona is likely going to build a school. And it's also within about a 10 or a 15-minute walk of the Target and Hy-Vee, that whole Orchard Point area there. And it sits on the, on the corner of McKee and Fitch-Rona, which is the D bus route and the 75. And of course, if the referendum passes, the 75 will be expanded to have all-day service rather than just commuter hours. So I think that's a very important area there to kind of put a lot of people right next to the places that they want to be, and also provide access to good public transit. And if any of you have driven on Seminole Highway, Nesbitt Road, or Fitch-Rona Road, you've likely cursed. Those roads should be paved. I think, I don't know, Ben, if you know for sure, it's this week, right, that they're going to start paving?
That's my understanding.
Okay. And then sidewalk replacement. There was a bit of a snafu, so with some of the mailings. So the public hearing for that is now Monday, October 21st at the Board of Public Works meeting at 5:30. And then that work should all be done before winter yet this year.
Where's the sidewalk replacement occurring?
All across the city.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, that's one of those deals where if it's in front of your house, you're on the hook for some portion of it. So if there's sidewalks on both sides of the street, then you'd be on the hook for 50%. If there's sidewalks on one side of the street, you and your neighbor across the street are each on the hook for 25%. And then I think there's special rules if you're on the corner lot, whether it's the long side of your lot or the short side of your lot, that kind of thing. But I think it works out to in the neighborhood of $90 per slab, I think, something like that.
Do you know if your sidewalk is slated to be replaced, do they notify the residents, or do they just show up and start repairing it and then you get a bill?
No, they do, yeah. So I had mentioned the public hearing got pushed back to the 21st because the notifications that went out had problems with it. So the notifications went to the correct address, but they had the wrong name on it. And so, if that happens, people tend to probably just throw it away. And so to ensure that everybody is notified within the appropriate time, within 30 days of the upcoming hearing.
Got it, okay.
Altogether, I think it's in the neighborhood of $200,000 worth of work to be done across the entire city. Yeah, that's about it for me.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Move on to item 7, staff and commissioner updates. Ben, I guess Phil's not gonna be here, is here tonight, so you're gonna do all 3 of them?
Yeah, I'll get through these here. So staff completed and submitted the DNR's recycling grant application. So this is the annual grant application that the city submits for each year. Typically receive about $105,000 essentially that goes towards basically subsidizing the cost of our curbside collection program. Let's see. There should be a new informational video that FACTv helped me out with. Just kind of going over the basics of Fitchburg's curbside collection program. So it's a pretty short video, but it just kind of talks about proper placement of carts, proper placement and stacking of brush. How to get your yard waste bagged so it gets picked up, and just kind of those basic things. I've had a few issues every now and again with things brush not being stacked or not being put out correctly, and people don't get their brush picked up, and that's can be of course frustrating. So just getting a little bit more information on that. I guess those are kind of the big things. Stormwater, a little bit more in there. So at the end of September, we did open bids for the proposed Area H stormwater pond. So this is the proposed regional pond up at the sod farm on Clayton Road. So this project has been in the works for many years. This basin would provide stormwater peak rate and quality treatment towards upstream developments in the uptown area. So again, kind of east of the Bird Apartments and north of the Phoenix or Shine facility. So we did get 6 bids, very competitive bids. James Peterson's Sons provided the apparent low bid. That was just shy of $2.5 million. This project may or may not be awarded. There's some questions as to whether or not the property owners that would be utilizing this pond, they would be charged back the cost to construct it based on, how many ever acres they have that drain to it. There has been basically based on this $2.5 million, any development, they would be charged about $45,000 per acre, for this pond. That's, a significant a significant figure. So the city does not have a memorandum of understanding signed with the landowners here. So they're kind of doing their own exercise right now to see if they think they could build out stormwater management facilities on their own sites for less than $45,000 an acre. So I believe we'll know whether or not the city awards this project. We should know before November whether or not that will move forward. Still kind of continuing some modeling work for the Fitchburg Road Goose Lake Stormwater Improvements Project. We're cleaning up the existing conditions model a little bit. Planning to get a wetland delineation done here this year yet. We're right kind of at the end of time when we can do that. So looking to get that done, and also get a little bit more topo survey out there at some key locations where we want some actual boots on the ground survey data. Probably still kind of continuing modeling some different proposed condition scenarios the rest of the year here. And then at that point, we'll probably look to have maybe some public information meetings, and then hopefully start getting a design put into the works and drafted on paper. So that project's moving forward. Still continuing to work on the Crescent Road Stormwater Improvement Project, which is slated for 2025. This is a project where the city will be using the congressionally directed spending that was distributed by the federal government through an EPA grant. It's called the EPA Community Grant. So we're just working through the steps with them, making sure we've got all our procurement requirements met and so forth. So we're abiding by all the different rules that come along when you're using federal dollars. Looking to get an RFP out for engineering services for a proposed stream bank stabilization project. So this is the Yarmouth Greenway, basically just north of PD and the Triverton Greenway, up to the Nine Springs Golf Course. There's sections of the stream bank that are definitely suffering from some urban stream syndrome where you see vertical banks, ton of erosion. So we'll be looking at trying to stabilize that and hopefully prevent continued degradation of the stream banks there. And
do you anticipate any effects from the BRT terminal being placed on Triverton Pike there just south of PD? Is that going to play at all into that?
No, I don't see any impacts from that.
Okay.
Shouldn't change our project in any way there. So yeah, we'd be looking to get this project designed in 2025. Also probably try to get some grants. There's a couple that the DNR has available that this project might fit nicely into. So get some applications out in 25 and then look at 26 for construction. And Yahara Wind, so that's the adaptive management plan that I was kind of talking about earlier that the city pays into to meet TMDL compliance. Right now, they're kind of looking at updating their cost model. So right now, the city pays in $100 some $1,000 a year to construct these more kind of agricultural best management practices. They're going to start looking back at, the money they've spent so far. How much did it actually cost to install these practices? How much TP reduction did they actually realize with these practices? And then based on that, they'll make an adjustment to, how many dollars all these communities, Fitchburg, Middleton, Verona, have to pay into the adaptive management plan to meet TMDL requirements. So we're kind of just started, working with their advisory committee there to make sure we're staying on track with the adaptive management plan. And then sustainability, I've got quite a few things here. So as Bill mentioned, approve the purchase of the 3 electric vehicles, building inspection, assessment, and PD. So it looks like we're gonna be updating the 2017 bicycle and pedestrian plan. So that'll be interesting. Looks like that'll be kind of coming up here in the next few months. And Phil got the recycling and shred events
Is
scheduled.
that something we could get a presentation from? Who would give that to us on the bicycle plan?
It's the Bicycle and Pedestrian Commission that's going through the 2017 plan and doing as much work as they can, because then it'll get handed off to a consultant to actually do the upgraded plan. And I'm unsure what the timeline is there. Are you looking to provide input before it goes to the consultant, or do you want to see the presentation after
Probably
the
after,
draft
I
is
would
done?
think, yeah.
Okay.
So I think it would be nice to have that, hear that.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Okay, so maybe once they get we could see about having whoever their the consultant is coming in and maybe doing a little presentation.
Okay.
Ben, is that something we should let Phil coordinate, or do we want to talk to Mark Hamilton, chair of the Bike and Ped Commission?
Well, I guess I'll talk to Phil about it and let him decide how he wants to go about that.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
And let's see, so looking at some significant updates to the Fitchburg zoning code in the next couple of years. Looks like there's a change that's going to help clarify the acceptability of roof-mounted PV solar. So looks like this change would make it a little bit easier for homeowners to add solar. I don't know a ton more about that, but it looks like that would be a big thing with getting Fitchburg from bronze to gold status in the Soul Smart, or as a Soul Smart community. So yeah, it sounds like within the next few months we'll know a little bit more about whether Fitchburg is going to be on track to get to gold, or potentially even platinum. Let's see, Greater Madison MPO looking to apply for a federal grant to help fund a countywide partnership on low carbon transportation materials. So it looks like that grant's going to be for training of municipal staff, assistance with updating existing documents, to incorporate some more consideration of the low carbon transportation materials in construction projects and RFPs. And I guess Fitchburg's looking to join this countywide partnership. Sounds like there's going to be some more info on this, and some upcoming meetings here. So that sounds exciting. Have to hear more about that from Phil.
Great.
And that's it for sustainability.
All right, thanks, Ben, for covering those 3 areas. Last item on the agenda is 7D, activities being conducted or monitored by commissioners. I have two things just to comment on. What's this provide update on Next Trex Recycling Challenge? I don't know.
Do you
Oh
want-
yeah, Kim, do you wanna take that one?
Sure,
It just
sure.
it was the Lions Club program. Got some
Oh,
new
okay.
things
Yeah, I
to
think
share.
the meeting you were gone,
Okay.
there was a presentation on it.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so basically Sean Path, who's the president of the Fitchburg Lions Club, had reached out to me about getting involved in this Next Trex challenge based on the article I'd written on Plastic Free July. And so we discussed it at that RCC meeting and everyone was on board with it. And so we met to kind of talk through ways to get the word out to everyone about this challenge. And I had reached out to my contact with Channel 3 who had covered the plastic free stuff. And she was very excited to cover this event. So I scheduled interviews on Monday. So she did a Zoom interview with the contact from Next Trex to kind of talk about the whole event. And then we met over at Pick and Save and did Sean and I did interviews on kind of the partnership between the city of Fitchburg, RCC, Pick and Save, Lions Club, to the importance of doing this challenge, and kind of talked about the different types of bags and plastic that they can drop off at the Pick and Save store or at City Hall or the community center, which is where we have the boxes set up. And then on Friday, we came up here to City Hall and Ben helped us weigh all of the plastic, and she got did shots of that as well.
Okay.
And then, so she's gonna be, probably after the election, she will be putting together a story to air and then kind of also do something online that everyone then can share out, among their contacts as a way to kind of get the word out about this challenge and why we're doing it. And the Lions Club, so basically we have a year to collect 1,000 pounds of this plastic, and we started in July, so we have until June. So we've collected, I think, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, about like 256 pounds so far?
Yeah, it was like 250 plus or minus.
Yeah.
About a quarter of the way there.
So we'll be kind of talking other ways to kind of get the word out and kind of build some excitement around it. But so far, people have been dropping stuff off at City Hall and Community Center and Pick and Save. And then Sean picks it up and drops it off at Pick and Save, and then Next Trex picks it up and takes it from there. So.
Pretty good.
I was at Pick and Save recently, and I saw the boxes that they've had there for years, but I didn't see one that with the Lions logo. Where is it?
So I did the exact same thing. So when you first walk in the doors, it's right there to the left.
So
When you
it's
walk
not,
into the, it's not when
so
you're
this-
exiting.
Okay.
So yeah, same thing happened to me too when I first walked in there. I sent a message to Sean. I'm like, "Where's the box? I didn't see it." And he's like, "It's right when you walk in."
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
I know they're doing some remodeling in the store, I heard, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think one of the exciting things about this is that now we have a good contact with the Pick and Save corporate office and the communications department and the local Pick and Save, which I think will help as we continue to do the bring your own bag event and kind of education around the plastic bags. So.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
So Ben, did you have anything else to add to that?
No, very, very well summarized. Yeah.
Okay, I'll kind of piggyback on the plastic bags. Last month, I spent a week in Colorado, and I walked into a grocery store, bought some groceries for my son. I helped him move out there, and I go, there's no plastic bags. Everybody's bringing in their own bags, or they're using paper bags. The whole state, no plastic bags.
Yeah.
It's like, I was amazed. I say, well, why can't we do that here?
Because of previous legislation. So that's why. That's why we're having.
Unless we have to change that legislation.
Yes, yes.
But I thought it was pretty cool. People seemed to adapt.
Yeah.
No one seemed to complain. They charged you 10 cents for each
Yeah.
paper bag that you used.
Yeah,
So I thought this is pretty cool.
yeah. It can be done,
Yeah, it can be done. The whole state could do it.
Right,
We
yeah.
can do it.
yeah.
It'd be nice if we didn't have 1,000 pounds of plastic to collect.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous, I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at it,
Yeah.
so, yeah. But hopefully a step in the right direction in terms of educating people and
Yeah.
working towards the bigger picture, hopefully.
Okay. So to end on a final good note, I received this in the mail from the Groundswell Conservancy.
Oh, yeah?
It's a note. It says, Dear Ronald, I would like to thank you and the Resource Conservation Commission for supporting the well drilling at Paisley Swan Creek Farm.
Oh.
We couldn't have done it without the continuous compassion and understanding of everyone. In appreciation, Yamaj, I can't say his last name. It's YMMUAJ. So, some nice note from them.
Yeah, at the October 8th council meeting, there was one just like that, sitting at Gabriella's spot and at Julia's spot, because they were also,
Oh, okay,
you know, Mayor and Gabriella, when she was on RCC, was instrumental.
okay.
That's great.
And, yeah, I know we did a lot of work to help them get that done real quickly, so.
Yeah,
All right.
and, ordinance.
Excellent news.
The plan
I have
council.
one more thing to share.
Okay. Go ahead.
So I did present at the Madison School Board meeting on September 30th and presented the concept of a policy for their carton recycling in all of their Madison schools. And so that was presented to the Madison School Board, which included the superintendent. And as a follow-up to that, we did share a draft carton recycling policy that we came up with them to consider. So we'll be now doing some follow-ups to see what comes next with that policy development.
Wow, that's great news.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
It's been a road.
Yeah.
Okay, is there anything else? If not, meeting's adjourned. It's 8:52.
Good job.
All right.